comparing between eras is not easy, but I'm going to give it a shot. And I'm going to try to keep this as simple and quick as possible. And we're going to go back to 1991, which was my grad year. So, grad 91. In that year, the Pittsburgh Penguins won the Stanley Cup for the first time, and a big part of the reason why, they pick up Ron Francis, Grant Jennings, Ulf Samuelsson from Hartford in exchange for John Cullen, Parker, and Zalapsky were the other guys involved in that one. Jeff Parker and Zarley Zalapsky. Now, on the surface, we all look back at this and say, worst trade ever. Right? It's one of the worst trades ever. It's not, though. Not at the time it's made. John Cullen had put up a lot of points with Pittsburgh, and I think Hartford wanted to change the narrative a bit, and there was some question about whether or not Francis was really a guy they could long-term look for whatever from. Hartford wasn't run very well, so I'm trying to put in some logical thought where there isn't necessarily a lot there, which kept the franchise spinning its wheels. Samuelsson, he wasn't known yet very well, and part of the reason that these deals happen, and I'm going to get to that, is just familiarity. Here's the big one. Now, as a Canuck fan, when this went down, this is when I got laughed at a lot by my classmates. Courtnall, Dirk, Momesso, and Ronning are traded to Vancouver for Dan Quinn and Garth Butcher. I had never seen Courtnall, Momesso. I'd seen Ronning in a couple of games. See, we didn't have the coverage of sports like we have now. We weren't inundated with it. Back in my day, no, we're not going there. But the difference is, St. Louis really didn't see the value in what they were trading to the Canucks. Scouting was not what it is now. Now, brilliant move by Pat Quinn bringing these guys in. Brilliant, because Dan Quinn was not getting it done in Vancouver, and Garth Butcher, I love Garth. He'll forever be a Canuck. At the time he was traded to St. Louis, he had already started to feel the effects from being overplayed in Vancouver on that blue line. They pick up Momesso, Ronning, and Courtnall, an entire line for Dan Quinn and Robert Dirk. And of course, these guys were kind of underutilized by St. Louis, and there was a belief that St. Louis would get over the top with Dan Quinn and Garth Butcher. Yeah, they wanted physicality on the blue line. Robert Dirk was physical, but he had less upside than Butcher, I guess. Between the two, I would definitely take Garth Butcher for his career, but at that moment, I don't know there was that much to choose between the two. The Canucks also got Dana Merzen at that same trade deadline, I believe it was, for not a whole lot from Calgary. And I said to friends of mine, I said, this team's going to win a Stanley Cup. No, they're going to make the playoffs. I said, next year they're going to be a pretty good team, and I got laughed at. People were like, are you kidding me? The Canucks? They're never going to be any good at all. This trade completely changed the complexion of the Canucks and would never happen today. I think people online are more well scouted on players than scouts were back then. And it's because the information wasn't as shared as it is now. Roger Nielsen got criticized as much as anything else for the use of videos to scout players. He was kind of mocked for it when he first did it. He was the first coach to do it. And now it's just standard. You could not imagine not having that part of the conversation. 1994, Nedved was traded to St. Louis for Craig Janney. Craig Janney said, I'm not going to Vancouver. And I said, good. I never liked Craig Janney. I didn't like him in Boston, and I didn't want him in Vancouver. So he gets traded back to St. Louis for Jeff Brown, Brett Hedican, and Nathan Lafayette. And the Canucks went to the final that year. Again, Jeff Brown himself would rule this out now. And not only that, but the Nedved for Janney trade never would have happened by today's standards because Janney would have had a no-trade clause. Craig Janney, if he played now, would have had a modified no-trade clause, and Vancouver would have been on the list. Absolutely. He did not want to play in Vancouver. And that's the other change between these trades and when these took place and now. You have guys on no trade, no movement. You have contracts that can't be moved. Remember, there's no contract issues here because you pay him whatever. You don't have a salary cap. So you can add a Ron Francis to a Pittsburgh Penguins franchise. You can't do that now. Ron Francis, in '91, based on the totals he put up for the 10 years before that, he would have been $8-9 million a year player. Pittsburgh already had Yager, who would have been on an entry level contract. Agreed, he would have been cheap, but they had Lemieux and Coffey and Barrasso. Yeah, there's no way they could have afforded this. No chance. Samuelson, a hard-nosed, borderline dirty defenseman. There's no chance. He would have been 4.5 million a year with today's salary cap and the way the structures are. And the one that stands out to me is the New York Rangers in '94 acquired Craig McTavish and gave up Todd Marchant to get him. And I don't know that a trade like that would have happened now. Craig McTavish was not an offensive dynamo at any point. And while he played his role in the '94 Rangers, I think they would have won it without him. And I don't know that trading out Todd Marchant would have been a very popular move by today's standards. Fast forward a bit, 2007. This is where things start to change. Ryan Smith was picked up by the Islanders. Famously, Smith cried when he left Edmonton. For Ryan O'Mara, Robert Nilsson, and a 2007 first-round pick. So, not a lot. But it was all futures. If you look at what's going on here, these are all hockey deals. These are teams like, all right, we're making our team better for now and for next year. This is a rental. Hockey trades like this still take place, but they're usually not big names that are involved in the hockey trades. 2008, Marian Hossa and Claude Dupuis are traded to Pittsburgh for Colby Armstrong, Eric Christensen, Angelo Esposito, and a 2008 first-round pick. At the time, that was considered a half-decent return. Colby could have been a 20-goal scorer a year by his early projections. Christensen, 15-goal guy. Esposito, maybe in the right situation. Maybe he'll thrive. And then a first-round pick thrown in. It was seen as a decent return for Hossa and Dupuis. Dupuis, of course, played a larger role in Pittsburgh than I think any of us thought when this trade went down. And, of course, Hossa got the Penguins to the final and then signed with Detroit, where he got to the final and lost, and there's a picture where somebody photoshopped a Red Wings jersey on him with the same sad face he had in Pittsburgh, which was quite popular the summer of 2009. But this shows how trades had changed. So here's Hossa and Dupuis, two guys, and they're traded for three who are seen as having upside in a first-round pick. Whereas here, you've got the Canucks picking up four guys who are seen as underutilized by St. Louis, not rookies, for two guys who are a touch older, but not a lot. Then I'm fast forwarding to this year's 2018's trade deadline. I've been so busy dealing with the draft lottery. I knew I was going to screw up say draft lottery, and I almost did. 2018, of course, Nemesnikov, Brett Howden, Libor Hajek, or Hajic, or somebody will correct me. 2018 first-round pick and a conditional second to the Rangers for JT Miller and Ryan McDonough. And everybody looked at this trade and said, wow, what a great job. It's as close to a hockey trade as you're going to get, but you have that coveted first-round pick and the conditional second, which didn't show up nearly as much in old trades back in the 90s, early 90s. At the draft table, sure, you'd be trying to draft up, but this we want draft picks and prospects is now standard. And back then, it didn't necessarily happen. Again, it was because you didn't have the salary cap limitations, and rebuilds were seen as different back then. They weren't. I mean, there was tanking. There was Pittsburgh tanked, and I don't think Quebec tanked. I think they were just crap. But teams that were rebuilding, you'd see a couple of them. Now there's a lot. And of course, Nash goes to Boston for Ryan Spooner, Lindgren, Bolesky, a first-round pick this year, and a seventh-round pick in 2019. Not 2017, 2019. And, I still defend that trade. I don't have a problem with it. I think Boston did okay for themselves. I think the Rangers did okay for themselves. And that's about as close as you get to a trade now that's going to be a hockey trade. But it's different than what it was. And I just decided to go with some of the bigger trades, some of the more talked about trades, just to try to describe how it's different. And it was a challenge given to me by one of the patrons, and I'm looking through my patron list today and saying, all right, I'm going to give a couple of these a shot. And this it's changed. The trade deadline's changed a lot in the last 30 years. And you go all the way back to 1980 when Butch Goring was picked up by the New York Islanders from the LA Kings. And that's really where everybody credits the idea of improving at the trade deadline to be a major part of things. But it really didn't kick in until here. The 91 trade deadline. And everybody talks about the Francis deal, and that was massive. But the Courtnall deal was massive for Vancouver. And it really changed the way things were done. And I really don't see a team moving 4 players who are roster players for 2. I can't see it. I can't see that today in today's day and age. Not 4 guys with the potential of these 4 in Vancouver. But I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and how trade deadlines have changed, or if you're too young to know that they've changed. There you go. Anyways, I just wanted to briefly touch on it. I didn't want to spend hours going on this and Rain Man the complete board. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.